Hello, everybody, and a warm welcome to all of you who have joined us today for the Glow Heartfulness webinars. Today, we have a very special guest, Jaya Jagdish, who is the country head and corporate vice president of Advanced Micro Devices, which is one of the leading semiconductor devices organization in India. So, for the first timers who have joined us today, GLOW is an acronym for Genuine Loving Outstanding Women. And in this program, we teach meditation for women all over the world, that is heartfulness meditation. Heartfulness meditation is a very simple yet effective type of meditation on the heart in the presence of yogic transmission, which is imparted by the guide. Ms. Jaya Jagdish is the country head and corporate vice president of Silicon Design Engineering AMD. She leads a team of 500 plus engineers across Bengaluru and Hyderabad. And today, Jaya Jagdish is going to talk about women in STEM and the changing narratives as to how women find success and joy as they see their ambitions and passions finding fruits. Her own life and her journey has been a huge inspiration to me, and I'm sure it's been the same for every girl who starts her STEM journey in their early 20s. So, hello, ma'am, and thank you so much for joining us today. It's an honor and a privilege and an utmost pleasure to have you with us.
It's my pleasure, Purnima. Thank you.
So tell me a little bit about your childhood, from where your interest and inspiration in STEM emerged.
Sure. So I had a really nice childhood. I come from a middle class family where there was a lot of emphasis on education and hard work. I mean, I was told at a very early age that there are no shortcuts in life. You have to work hard, you have to study, education is very important. So that was the background. And also, we lived in a joint family. Although the finances were not as, abundant, there was abundance of love and affection in the family. And it was a beautiful environment at home. So that was my childhood. Nothing else other than science and math really interested me to pursue that as my education. So there was no debate, there was no much thinking. I just got into STEM because that's what I felt I was naturally inclined towards. And of course, at home, I grew up in a joint family. I had lots of uncles who were amazing engineers, and a couple of my aunts were doctors. So all that kind of inspired me to pursue a career in STEM.
Thank you so much, ma'am. My next question would be, how did you manage, or maybe balance is the right word, how did you balance your engineering studies, your graduate, postgraduate engineering studies, along with family responsibilities? Also, there weren't many women in STEM at that time. And so how was the solitude like?
Sure. We're talking about 30 years ago, that I chose to get into engineering, and it was the world, especially in India, it was opening up to more and more women getting into engineering. It was not a widely accepted or a common thing. For me, it was, again, 30 years ago, the pure sciences were not as, there weren't that many opportunities in research or in pure science. So it was a very determined, set thing. If you're good in studies, if you score well in your 12th, then you become a doctor or an engineer. And if you are a woman, then of course the natural course is really to become a doctor. I mean, that was kind of the society's expectation. But for me, of course, medical, although I have huge respect to the doctors, what they do, for me, somehow I couldn't fathom or perceive myself dealing with all the sufferings and blood. And, that was something that didn't really think I could do. And then engineering was, of course, influenced by my uncles and relatives. I felt engineering had the potential to solve the world's problems. So it was kind of a natural gravitation towards engineering. Yes, it was not a very common thing. I actually very vividly remember this episode when I went to kind of share the news of me getting a seat in one of the good colleges for electronics engineering. I went to distribute sweets to my professors, and one of them actually made a statement, "You're wasting a boy's seat, by becoming an engineer." And I was actually quite upset. And I was like, why is he even telling me this? I argued with him saying, no, sir, I will be a good engineer. Why do you think it's a waste? I'm interested in it. And of course, he kept saying, no, it's not about, I'm not trying to be derogatory or anything. That's how life is. Women, no matter how much education they get, they finally give it all up and, they to take care of the families. It kind of dawned probably a bitter truth that of what was happening then. And also it triggered a resolve to not let go of my education or to make the best use of my education. Somewhere that kind of also led to this resolve within me. And yes, challenges whenever you are interested in multiple things, when you don't like a monotonous life, challenges will be there in terms of balancing everything, in terms of making sure things are taken care of. And as women, we all tend to be perfectionists, right? We want to do everything right. We feel guilty if we don't show up in time for a family meal. I mean, even small things like that, we can go on a guilt trip. And I'm no different. I had my own share of challenges. But what made it different is I didn't think giving up something that I love was a solution to the problems or the challenges. I felt these were short-term challenges. Yes, I had to drive 100 miles. My first job was 100 miles away from where I lived. So I traveled every single day, driving 200 miles back and forth, which by itself was a big challenge. But those were short-term challenges, children growing up or, elderly care. These are not for the rest of your life. So every time I had a challenge, I would tell myself, no, this will go away. I will handle this. I need not give up something that I love. And also the thought of, okay, I can always take the easy route of giving it all up and then focusing on something that requires a lot of attention. But what after the challenge is done? What do I do? It's not just easy for us to just flip back and forth into our careers because it requires some serious investment and time. So I've definitely juggled by placing things on the back burner when or deprioritizing some things slightly lower when family requires attention. Yes, work I'll probably not be able to push myself as aggressively as I usually do. But whereas when there's an aggressive program or a project happening at work, family kind of time reduces, and I'm okay with that. So dealing with life as phases where you kind of get a balance in these phases is how I would like to look at. And that's what really helped me deal with the challenges and still pursue with passion what I was interested in.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I was just wondering, was there these times when you ever felt like calling it quits? Like, of course, you did mention that, you look at life in phases rather than one huge stretch. So there must have been times when you really wanted to call it quits, or do you think it was your personal DNA to just continue working and be a go-getter? And how did you manage this whole journey for almost 3 decades?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anyone is born with it, right? I mean, it's not like, oh, I'm just special and I'm a superwoman and I'm doing it. No, that's not at all the case. I mean, I had my own share of challenges, and I probably can quote 100 instances where I wanted to quit. I mean, why am I dealing with this? Why should I even continue? Let me just call it quits. But there was also a deeper voice within me that said, no, why should I give this up? That's not the real solution, right? I mean, if women have 100 reasons to give up something that we love, men also will have probably 99 reasons to give up. But you don't get to hear this from many men, right? Where or men are not even asked this question, did you want to give up your thing? Because a lot of women think their jobs or careers are optional. I mean, their mainstream work is to take care of family and kids and all that. And this can be optional. I mean, with that approach, of course, it will become optional, right? So somewhere that thought of, okay, my family is important and my career and what I have invested in, it defines who I am, at least a part of who I am. And that part is what kind of inspired me or motivated me to continue. And I don't want this to go away. I mean, I have invested into getting into engineering, pursuing a master's degree, and giving a lot into my career and into what I do at work. So it need not be, one versus the other. You can definitely kind of create a path, and as I said, you need not give up long-term dreams or aspirations for short-term challenges. There are ways where you can build up your ecosystem, get your support system in place, and it's not easy, but it's not impossible either. As long as you have that fire of passion that drives you to continue what you're passionate about.
Thank you so much, ma'am. That's a huge inspiration. Thank you once again. And I want to ask this specific question about your struggles in your leadership role. As you grew to become a leader in your organization, was it easy for people to accept you? Was it difficult? How was it for you to embrace leadership?
I mean, it's an interesting experience. I started my profession as an engineer in the US after I completed my master's. So I'd never worked in India, so I was not really exposed to the work culture in India. And bulk of my experience before I joined AMD was in US. So when I actually started working in India, that's also when I got into more leadership positions where I had to manage a team. And for me, I was quite oblivious of any of the potential gender biases that might have been there, because I didn't even think along those lines. I just thought, okay, I'm a manager, I'm a leader, and I want to do the right thing for my team and for my organization. That was the only thing working inside me. But of course, society had its own biases, and which came to my notice a bit later. As I started taking on leadership responsibilities in my organization, there were probably a few men who felt, they would be ridiculed, or it was kind of derogatory to report into a woman leader, and which I did not even think or understand initially. I was going about treating them as my regular, employees. I was there looking at their growth, looking at their opportunities. Hey, see, this is the skill set you have, and this is where you can improve. So I went about doing my job like normal. And then when year-end reviews came by, I had a few confessions where people actually came about and said, ma'am, we really have a confession, and we feel guilty. And that again surprised me. And, what I heard was, initially they were very apprehensive. They were concerned to report into me. One thing, because I was a woman, so it was difficult for them to know what to expect. And also they were worried about the society's reaction, their own circles ridiculing them. Hey, you work for a woman, that kind of a thing. But after working with me for a year, after seeing my style, they kind of felt, hey, there's nothing different. You are a wonderful leader and you make us so comfortable. And that why were we even worried was the thought process. And that bonded so well with me, they actually came out and shared. And that's when I was really shocked. Oh my God, people are still, having such biases. So, okay, maybe something I need to be a little more aware. But the fact that I was not aware, I was kind of oblivious, really helped me. And I felt good about it. I didn't do anything artificial to please them. I didn't do anything artificial to prove myself to them. It just happened over a natural course. So overall, challenges are definitely there, and the biases, although they're much less now, they're there. They will be there. And for me, as a woman or a woman leader, I don't think you should overly be obsessive about it or worry too much about it. You do your job, and people will accept you. People will see the value. It may take a little longer. It may not happen instantly, but I don't think that's something you should be worried. You just go about being your natural self and build your leadership strength.
Thank you so much, ma'am. How did your profession or career define you as a person?
There are two aspects. Each individual we have to understand our own strengths and weaknesses. I mean, it's not up to someone else to analyze our personality and say, these are your strengths and these are your weaknesses. We know much better than anyone else what we are, or what we stand for, what our strengths are. So that introspection is absolutely critical for every individual to understand. That way you can play on your strengths and then work on your weaknesses. We spend a lot of time working, with our professions. And of course, a company or an organization that you work with, or the group of people you work with, have a deep level of influence on you. And it really changes, and it kind of builds your personality. I mean, for example, I have always been an aggressive person who wants to do more, give my best in everything. But working for a company like AMD, which again, AMD was an underdog, and then we have always come back up as a huge fighter, and we have proven our competitors wrong, and we've proven the markets wrong. We've taken, we've brought out some great innovative products, and that we're absolutely proud of. So that as a professional in such an organization, that never give up attitude, or don't victimize yourself, or don't treat yourself as a victim. Get up, fight for it, and think to innovate, do something different. I mean, all these are things that I don't think I was just like, I don't want to say I was just born with it. I mean, these are things that I developed. My personality also changed while working with a team, while working with an organization. You kind of inherit, you kind of imbibe a lot of these aspects into you. And over time, it becomes a part of your personality. Well, that leadership, or that aggression, or never give up attitude, or, go-getter kind of thing. These are some of the traits that have really helped me as a leader working for an organization like AMD.
Thank you, ma'am. Tell me a little bit about your personal life, because before we started this webinar, I read a little bit about you, and I saw that you have this beautiful musical journey too. Tell me, what brings that twinkle to your eyes, or what defines your joys?
Yeah, music is a very important part of my life. It's I don't want to call it as a hobby. It's something that gives me utmost happiness and joy. So I am a trained Carnatic vocalist. I got into music because of course, my family. I grew up in a family that was always filled with music, dance, and drama. We have many artists in our family, and it was something that was a very natural thing. So I took on to music as a natural interest. When I was probably 5 or 6 years old, that's when I started learning music. I was initiated to it by my father, who himself was a violinist. And music, of course, I went on to complete my proficiency in music. And I used to teach a lot of kids and a few adults as well in US. When I moved to US right after my undergrad, that was my way of keeping in touch with music. And I continued to learn even after coming back. But today, music is a source of, peace and joy to me, more than performing or, public performances is something that I don't do. But I listen to it most of the time. It just gives me that inner peace. And that's what I love about it. And it almost gets me into a meditative mode when I listen to music. So no matter how hard of a day I have, I just need to turn on my Shruti box and I can calm down instantly. So music has that power in it. And I'm absolutely so grateful to my parents for initiating me into this beautiful art form. I love, of course, spending time with my family. I love to read. These days I read a lot more spiritual books, but I also read pretty much any fiction novels. I mean, I love reading and traveling, of course. Love to explore new places. refines your life. Any fine art actually gives that refinement and that extra joy in your life. Whenever there's an opportunity, I would, highly encourage everyone to take up something other than your mainstream profession.
Thank you, ma'am. We spoke about resilience, determination, aspiration, passion, all those lofty words. We also spoke about these beautiful concepts like joy, living in the moment and the present, and handling challenges. So we spoke about a lot of things. I'm asking you a direct question. What would you want women, that is young STEM students, young STEM women at work, to be inspired by?
These are amazing traits, resilience and passion and determination. These are indeed, they make you what you are. They make you good at, if you're a leader, they make you a great leader. But I don't want the young women or students to really walk away with, you need to be a superwoman to have a career and a family life. That's not what I'm telling. One thing that's very, very important for everyone to keep in mind is develop that curiosity and that determination to not give up something that you love, in face of challenges. That's the most important part of pursuing anything. The rest will follow. You will be determined. You will develop that passion. But if you are not curious, if you are not ready to explore or look what the world has, you are, failing right at the start. You're not even moving ahead in your journey. So develop that curiosity, develop that courage to pursue what you really want to, and not be bogged down with the biases or what others think about you. So that's that confidence and also curiosity and that determination to really pursue what you really love to. It need not be STEM, it need not be engineering, but if it's something that you're passionate about, if you're something that you want to pursue and you've done it, I think that's great. That's what keeps you happy in life, content in life. And the whole goal is not to go after something big or unrealistic or great, but to really develop that curiosity and pursue the things that you're passionate about in your life and make it a, joyous life. It's not a life worth living if, half the time you're worrying about the things that you did not get to do. So make it a satisfying life. Do the things that you want to do and, pursue the things that you want to pursue.
Thank you so much, ma'am. You basically just said, go live your life, be happy, be joyful, and just do what you like. So that's like very touching. And it's like coming back to earth and being on ground level. And it's like so soothing to actually know that, I don't have to be this woman with cape. I can just be who I want to be. Maybe I don't like the cape, or maybe the cape doesn't suit me. And it's okay to not be that woman with cape. So that's a very beautiful message. And I really thank you for that. So my next question would be about your spiritual practice or your meditative practice in your role as a working professional, as a wife, as a mother, and in general in other aspects too. Tell me about your spiritual inspiration and your learnings from that.
So spirituality is something that has been part of my life since childhood. I grew up in an environment that was always where bhajans or prayers or satsangs were part of our daily lives. So it came naturally to me to place my belief in God or Almighty, or however you want to define that. But I always believed in a universal power that was above and beyond us. Again, this was something that I grew up and was part of my life. But what really led me to kind of take it up more seriously was what I went through about 4 years ago. I went through a medical crisis. I was diagnosed with bowel cancer, third stage. And much to my unacceptance or shock, it was something that I had to deal with all the surgeries and chemotherapies and radiation. That was not easy at all. So that again led me into a very chaotic situation, internally. I was struggling to accept the facts, and I was struggling to find answers to many of the questions. And I felt like I had lost my anchor in life. And spirituality was the one that gave me the strength to really get up. It provided me that anchor that I was really struggling to find. And it gave me a much different perspective about life than what I had before. It gave me the strength to accept life as it came to me, to accept the things that were happening to me, and still not, give up on my life, still continue life with the same passion and rigor that I had before. So spirituality in terms of meditation or, the practices, the spiritual practices, I think they've really given me back my life for the second time. So today I'm indeed very grateful to Almighty for my second chance in life, and absolutely grateful, filled with gratitude to my gurus who have shown me the path to continue with my life. So spirituality is something that I have benefited from, and it's really an anchor to me today that I live by.
Thank you so much, ma'am. On that note, I would like to offer a session of heartfulness, relaxation, and meditation to you and to all our participants. You don't need to have a prior meditative experience or a prior meditative learning to go through this session. It's a very simple heart-based meditation, and I'll go through certain relaxation commands where we will relax our body. Just follow my voice and relax your body. Towards the end of which we will meditate on the source of light in the heart. So let's begin now. Sit comfortably and close your eyes. Let's begin from the toes. Wiggle your toes, relax them. Relax your feet. Feel an energy rising from Mother Earth through your feet, relaxing your feet, relaxing your legs as it rises up. This energy moves up, relaxing your knees, your thighs, your hips. Slowly as it moves up, it relaxes your lower back. Gently moving up and relaxing your upper back. Your whole back is completely relaxed now. Feel this energy moving up, relaxing your stomach, relaxing your chest, the muscles in your chest, in your abdomen and chest. This energy moves up and relaxes your shoulders, relaxes your arms. This energy flows through your arms, relaxing your forearms, your elbows, your wrist, your palm, fingers, fingertips. This energy oozes out of your fingertips, relaxing your arms completely, both your arms completely. Allow this energy to move up your neck, relaxing your neck. All the tensions in the neck is dissolving away. As your neck is completely relaxed, allow this energy to move up, relaxing your face. The muscles in your face are relaxing now. Your jaws, ears, earlobe, cheeks, nose, eyes, forehead, till the tip of your head. Your whole body is completely relaxed. Scan your system from head to toe. Is there any part which aches, which needs relaxation? If so, allow this energy to move to that part of the body and relax it. All parts of your body are completely relaxed. You are in a completely relaxed state. Gently bring your attention to your heart. There is a source of light in your heart. Let us meditate on this source of light in the heart and allow it to pull us deep into our heart, into meditation. If you get distracted with other thoughts, gently brush them away and bring your attention back to the light in your heart. Let's continue meditating this way for a few minutes. Gently open your eyes when you feel ready. Thanks to all the participants who joined us today in this meditation session. Towards the end of this webinar, there would be a few resources for you to continue your heartfulness journey. Thank you so much to Jaya Jagadish ma'am from EMB for launching this Women Empowerment series and for sharing her personal journey and her inspiration. Ma'am, if you have any closing thoughts.
Thank you so much for allowing me to share parts of my journey with you all. It's a great initiative, Purnima, and you have been an absolute joy to work with, and thank you so much. Love doing this session as much as you have. And I really hope, we've been able to provide some inspiration or motivation to our young women out there. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for joining us.